Jack Jennings, the very highly regarded founder of the Center for Education Policy and in many respects the keeper of the national scorecard on federal legislation, especially No Child Left Behind, recently commented that he can see no improvement in student performance for the country as a whole and for the groups of vulnerable students for which it was intended as a result of the passage of No Child Left Behind. It has been 14 years. There is actually, to come to your question, no surprise in this. If you look at the strategies pursued by the top performing countries in the world in education, you will look in vain for a strategy that looks anything like No Child Left Behind. We look at No Child Left Behind, what we're looking at is Congress demanding value for their money. They wanted to light a fire under teachers, and they wanted to punish those who wouldn't respond. To me, this is perfectly understandable and represents a total misunderstanding of the actual situation. From my perspective, the teachers were caught in a system they did not create. They were caught in a system designed for a totally different purpose, as I will get to in a moment. We need to ask ourselves how the teachers could be blamed for all of this when it was the school boards who gave away all the management prerogatives that they had as an alternative to raising teachers' pay, while at the same time, the top performing countries were working very hard to make beginning teachers' pay equal to that of engineers in their country. We need to ask ourselves why it was, if it was the teachers who were at fault, that state officials kept approving programs of teacher education that have become a national joke. We need to ask ourselves why, if it was teachers who were at fault, this picks up on a point that Dennis just made, legislators, year in and year out, would waive the already very low standards for teachers in order to put a warm body in front of the students, while the top performing countries were making sure, as Dennis said, that there was no shortage of great teachers. In the top performing countries, there is a surplus of great teachers because of the policies they have pursued over the last 20 or 30 years. The fact of the matter is that we are looking at a failed system for which all of us are responsible. The United States has bounced back and forth over the last 40 or 50 years between concentrating on quality and concentrating on equity. We have never seemed to be able to do the same thing at the same time. But it is precisely what these other countries are doing. Very high access and equity combined with very high quality for all students. I guarantee you that cannot be done with the system we have. The answer to your question is, these other countries recognized they had to redesign the system from the bottom up. The OECD publishes a graph. It's got two axes on it. And one is for equity and one is for quality. And in the northeast part of that chart, those countries that are very high in equity and very high in quality. The United States is at the other end of the chart. I want to move us to the northeast part of the chart. And if you look at the countries that are already in the northeast part of the chart, I won't go into the whole thing, but the key points are the following. One is, as I think Dennis said, more resources go to the kids who are hardest to educate than go to the kids who are easiest to educate. And that mostly has to do with the ratio between teachers and kids in the school. There are more teachers in the schools serving kids who are hard to educate. Number two, they have very high standards. They really are benchmarked to the world's best countries, and they are unforgiving about the standards. The standards are very high. The difference is they're organized to meet those standards for all kids. The key to that, basically, is having absolutely first-rate teachers who have been very well trained and are very well supported once they are in the schools. We are recruiting our teachers, probably, it looks as though, from the bottom quarter of the kids who graduate from our high schools and go to college. They are recruiting theirs from the top quarter, the top 20%, the top 15%, in the case of South Korea, the top 5%. That makes a giant difference. We're sending our kids to teachers' colleges for which there is a very low regard. If we're going to have a nation of kids who are in the northeast quadrant of that OECD chart, we have to build a new system. The countries that are now on top, that are serving all their kids, have not done this in 4 years, or 2, or 3. They have done it in 10, 20, and 30 years. I can name you countries. I can give you the history. It was not done overnight. If we cannot get our act together to decide that we want and need a new system and form a consensus about how to build it, we'll see more and more and more kids we want to help today and will not be able to.